Give me a moment, guys. I'm going to be back in a sec. I'm having issues with StreamYard. This happens. I don't know, it's only been happening. It's been happening the past week or two. When I try to go on somebody else's show and that same thing's happening. Just get booted out and stuff. 1 second, yeah. Right, I'm back. This is an unarranged live. This is an unarranged live. I ain't been on here for a bit. As you can see in the title, I'm just going to basically speak on new Pepsi and Coke methods and why evil cults push Angola as DR Congo. And the one thing I want to say in advance, I have nothing against, like, what I can't have anything personal against anybody that is from Angola. Like, generally, it doesn't make sense. I've met and grown up with some people from Angola, and there are good people from Angola. The subject matter is the people that's in control of, let's say, I don't know, that's in control for algorithms in certain areas. Was specifically talking about those type of people. But anyway, what I want to start off with, but I just wanted to say that first anyway. So when I say Angolan, to even be more specific, Bakongo people, okay? In general, I have no issues generally against Bakongo people. The leads of that's a different subject. You understand what I'm saying? So I'm going to get into that in a minute, but I just wanted to make that very, very, very clear. In regards to new Pepsi and Coke methods, well, I will if we go back to 2000, I think, let's say 2009 or 2000 and let's say 2009 or around 2009. I probably was about, how old was I? Probably about, I don't know, 21 or something like that. I used to basically, prior to that, I used to get shown certain information and stuff like that by a family member, but I weren't really into it. When I say information and stuff like that, just like stuff that you'll find in America, like in relation to like Pan-Africanism and things like that. But I genuinely, it's mainly like let's say some of the Hebrew stuff, but I genuinely didn't really care. I was like a proper part of the world in that sense. But it still gave me something in the back of my head, that, there's different, thoughts of belief out there in the world, but I genuinely did not care about that. Going forward to about 2009, okay, I basically started to this project from one lady. She used to basically interview like ex cult groups, people from ex cult groups, people in government, people from like allegedly from the Pentagon, people from allegedly the so-called Illuminati and things like that. They used to interview them, and they used to talk about like let's they used to talk about like the Area 51s and stuff like that. Um, this lady's name was Kerry Cat. This lady's name was Kerry Cassidy. She had a project. Was it what do they call it? Project Camelot. So from back, we're talking about literally 2009. I basically was watching the earliest interviews from her projects, where she interviewed various different people's testaments and so-called alleged whistleblowing. And she was with another. I can't remember his name, but he wore like a cowboy cap, or cowboy hats, should I say? Um, they what they used to do less a random live. I didn't don't know what circle's gone now. But anyway, sorry, going back, that guy and her, they used to interview loads of different people, and they used to spill knowledge and stuff like that. And me being young, I used to basically obviously well, I'd say consume it all, not arrogantly, but I'll say innocently, if that makes sense. Um, as the years passed on, let's say approaching 2011, I started to basically grow a little bit of suspicion, solely on the basis that there was, I know that there was some different friction between Kerry Cassidy and her co-host, and I then started to basically realize that there some of the guests, like one of the main ones, the prolific one, he should talk about the moon a lot. I can't remember his name, might have been Richard Hoagland or something along the lines of that. He, I don't know whether it was him or somebody else, but some of the stuff that he said, I wasn't too basically sure about. And then I was doing my own investigation and stuff like that. And I started to then learn straight away, this is basically like a discredit, a scheme put up to discredit real information, if that makes sense. Because whatever would have happened probably at that period of time, especially after 9/11, there will be groups of people infighting within their own little sects or cults or whatever stuff like that. And then all of a sudden, boom, these people come out, and then there's truths coming out. And what I've began to identify is probably unavoidable truths. I don't know if you've ever seen an interview about, when I'm talking about these people that used to interview people. I don't know if some of you may remember an interview where there was this old looking fella. He must have said he saw aliens. Apparently, they looked black. I'm talking about that. Those the person that interviewed that person. I'm talking about that project. Those people. But anyway, why am I speaking about this? I'm speaking about this because as course of time went on, I began to basically see that there was information that was being put out that was true, and there was information to delete actual people that's actually bringing out true information that's basically going against the grain. Whatever happened as a result of that, it led to that lady that was running the project to split with her co-host. And her co-host, what did he do? He created a project called, I think, Project Avalon or something like that. I'm just saying all this just to highlight that obviously this was obviously some sort of cult group, and they're out there to basically create Pepsi and Coke situations. And just a heads up, I think David Icke would have been part of this thing as well, and some of you lot should know by now. David Icke is also Pepsi and Coke. People like Credo Mutua, he would have been part of this same scheme as well. In fact, I think Credo Mutua even had some interaction with, I don't know, it might have been with Project Avalon. I don't know, but obviously had interaction with David Icke, but I'm just saying they're part of the same thing. So what they do is they spill out truths, and they will basically spill out some lies to discredit certain truths. So from let's say okay, so let's say from 2006 or 2007, on YouTube, there was stuff about 9/11 that's no longer there anymore. Obviously, it's been removed and stuff like that. But there was some vital information about, you know, whether there was planes or not and things like that. Following from then is when they would have had an interest to basically use different shills to go out there and be basically projected in specific communities. That's basically asking questions. So that's how it works. So when I when I began to realize that this is a bit dodgy and stuff like that, I began to then listen to like the Pan Africanism thing, and I'm not even gonna. I want to name names. I'm just not naming names yet at the moment, but I want to name names. I started to listen to some Pan African related, let's so-called black empowerment related shows and stuff like that. Then during the course of time, there was correct information and historical information and stuff like that being put out by people. um I began to see the same techniques used as I saw um in the, let's say, the white people's projects in relations to truth movements and Area 51 and stuff like that. It's the same. It was basically the same mechanisms was used to basically attract an audience, to discredit real stuff or discredit what people should be actually focusing on. I understood that very, 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 very quickly, unfortunately. And what was more shocking is that the people that was there was people that appeared like well trained and well learned, even if they were in cult groups, and it's like they're acting almost blasé, like they don't know what's going on. So it made me wonder, like, what type of audience is accustomed to this, and then that's when I started to learn that extra stuff, like what's the age group of the people listening to this type of stuff? Is it young people? Is it, because I was kind of like stuck in like I was like kind of stuck in those, what's those, I can't remember what those rooms are called, but anyway, forget the analogy I'm going to give. But I was kind of stuck because I was really young, or I was much younger than I am now, and I'm not understanding how people can't see what's happening. And by the way, I'm talking about from 2012 to 2015. I'm identifying the same mechanisms used, whether it came from, I don't know, the Pentagon or whatever, I don't know. But anyway, it's the same mechanism used to basically discredit real information or discredit what the target community should actually be focusing on. So like I'm kind of stuck in limbo, and then I'm listening, and then I'm slowly noticing as the world is getting more stupid, they're able to basically up the ante in terms of spreading either lies or distracting people. It's getting much more easier to distract their target audience, I would say. And then as I started listening more, there was I was something psychological would have been happening with me. What I was realizing is that even though I knew that it was a Pepsi and Coke situation, I still lacked some of the information, if that makes sense. So over a period of time, I developed a skill set to basically, people, I hate that term now, eat the meat, spit out the bones, but that's what I was basically doing. But advancing that, what I've also basically done is used my, what's the word? I used like there's certain like receptors in my brain, in other words, that will let me know that this is a show going on. Okay, use the information, same information, compounds, and do, and that basically built up my knowledge base and that, about so-called. So what ended up happening is, moving on from that, I then decided to think. I then learned that some of these people are online as well, i.e., Facebook. And I was thinking, you know what? Let me try to start something for myself. I started my own little private things, for people that some people that I speak to, and to try and invite some people, but I wanted to keep it very, very, very small. So around 2017, I created an account called Red, and I had, what I've done is, I went on. It's basically the people in whatever Facebook, whatever, in their office, whatever, they locked it off, by the way. But I used to look for the what I say. I used to look for, like, the Hebrew Israelite groups that are the most prolific ones, and let's say some of the Pan African groups at that time. I've got witnesses. Cut long story short, in case you're thinking like some of the stuff that I'm saying is just coming out of the blue. Um, I I went into a group. What was the group called? I think it was called the Hebrew Israelite Kingdom. I used to basically ambush them with stuff that they did not like. Some of these ambushes would have been basically trolling to them, or that's what they'll do behind closed doors. You know how those Hebrew communities are. But I was basically telling them, use her about this, use her about that, da, 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 da. And I used to also anticipate how the Africans inside those groups react to certain stuff. And obviously, I began to realize that it's a play, but I didn't want to show them that too much. Moving forward, I eventually got kicked out of this group, and I'm just using the Hebrews like Kingdom group as an example. I eventually got kicked out of that group because I used to basically look and go after people, let's say some ISUPK accounts, some IUIC accounts, but they were the main accounts I used to look for, because they're the best ones that spreading anti-Africa rhetoric and stuff like that. And I used to basically put people in a position to say, how are you accommodating this when this is going on, just highlighting contradictions and stuff like that. Eventually I got kicked out and stuff like that. And before I got kicked out, and I think after, I highlighted that they're all just military personnel and stuff like that, and some of them have been involved in invading other countries and murdering innocent people and stuff like that. And they didn't take too kindly to that. They didn't take too kindly to that. But I'm just saying, this was, from back then. So I'm not new to understanding how whatever happens when these people are in, or after they leave whatever organization they're in, um, they're entitled to, basically, it's like they get given a pass who basically projects themselves onto other people, and basically assign people what's the word I'm looking for, like assign people, groups, or nations a felony, or a crime which they're allowed to act upon. It's like the typical Western military sort of thinking, and it's been applied to, obviously, the scriptures and other cultures, and even Pan-Africanism and stuff like that. So let's say, after I got kicked out of that after I got kicked out of that group, I then went into other groups and stuff like that. And I used to highlight and make a list of all the agents with Pan-Africanism, all the agents with in the Hebrew Israelite culture. And I used to literally make lists, and I made a group myself, and that basically got closed as well. That group got closed as well. But I made basically a list, and we're talking. This list was from 2000, and I think I made the list in 2017 or two. I think 2017. I made the list, but I'm not going to be able to get that list anymore. I have some of the list, but it was because it was a screenshot. I don't know how or why, or how I lost the other part. But I made a long list of YouTubers and so-called influencers who are basically agents in the black community, shouldn't basically follow them, because they're basically doing the Pepsi and Coke thing, which I learned ages ago. Um, Eventually, that account got shut down because what would have happened is some people in these cults online, what they do is they basically all group together and they basically will report your account, if that makes sense. And then what will happen is that you, because you've got so many reports against you, you will get blocked. And I also learned how basically they are allowed to say things. It's like I said, they get given a pass. They're allowed to say outlandish things, and if you match it, you will basically bear the shit end of the stick. In other words, it's the same like with, like, on a national scale, like with DRC Congo. DRC Congo is not allowed to match like for like in injustices, if that makes sense. If they do that, um, then what will happen is that you you will be made the enemy, and they'll make sure that the injustices on the counterpart would be overlooked or pushed away. Kind of relates to the Angolan and DRC Congo thing I'm going to speak about after. But going going for once, give me 1 second. See a lot of the subscribers I've got, but I believe that they are like dud accounts and fakes. If that, right. Anyway, here, I don't know if you can hear me. But yeah, so after yeah, so I had a list of like all the people that are listed down as, agents of the so-called black community and stuff like that. Um People didn't take too kindly to that, obviously. And what ended up happening is I ended up realizing, who is who, in the sense of what people like to listen to and what people don't like to listen to. I'm talking about the people that are leads, and I'll basically ask some people difficult questions when it relates to Africa or when it relates to Congo. And then after that, I would also realize how they'll then try to push certain people in the forefront to speak about Africa. And then that's where it makes sense that, like with politics, there's only certain people that can speak in relation to politics. It's just the same thing on a macro level, with social media. In other words, it's just exactly the same thing. So it's all regulated. Hence why, as we all know, like the Google and the whole shebang is run by the CIA and stuff like that. So in regards to how the Pepsi and Coke thing began to add, began new methods. Before it was just you have, let's say, mm, I'm so desperate to name a name. Let's say you had a I'm trying to, but it's just a Pepsi and Coke situation. It's just a drawing views and stuff like that. But it's not as innocent as that. And you notice when it started to change on the basis where um some people will openly say, "Oh, just draw viewers." Some people, were just brothers and stuff like that. that basically from what um and what would happen is over the time will become more apparent that um this money scheme going on, and as it becomes more apparent that it's just the money making scheme that's going on, they then had to realize that they had to basically, change their methods, especially during the thing as well. Um, During the COVID, what's happening now is, what's that feedback? How to basically project in a way and gaslight in a way where they'll openly come out and say that is part of like a certain fraternity out and be so-called blackball. They're allowed to now say, "I'm not part of that whatsoever," and then they had their own measures to basically hide it. The only people that say it in bold that they are part of whatever cult group or whatsoever. The only people that say have already been found out or will be found out. If that makes sense, if basically, so what they would also do is that they will look for other, let's say, people that's trying to also tell the truth, and they'll try to mimic. Forget the word truth teller, okay? They'll try to mimic people that's actually seeking the truth, if that makes sense. So what they'll do, the reason why they do that is because they need to sound authentic. Because these people that's been put in the forefront of you, they're not actually in the real world. As I said to you before, like I'm not saying this to put ourselves down, but I'm saying this in like in a UN way. We're the bottom feeders, the bottom, we're the regular people, if that makes sense. So these people that's been put in the forefront to, they are not exactly part of the real world. So they're genuine, like they actually, like I said, in terms of like their clumsiness, they they don't know how to working for. They don't know how to be in with regular folks. It's if they do show themselves to be in with regular folks, it's kind of forced, if that makes sense. Like me, where I grew up in East London, like I'm known. Like I can go to like I can go to my I can show you my primary school. I might even do it one day. I'll show you my primary school, my secondary school, the road I grew up. Um, and there'll be neighbours that they'll that can vouch to say, yeah, I know him. Da, da, da. I'm, I'm just saying this in a sense where I haven't got nothing to hide. I literally don't come from any sort of fraternity or group or anything like that, and that's problematic. And why is it problematic for Pepsi and Coke situations? It's problematic because I have no guidelines, I have no rules, I'm not controlled. Does that make sense? And I'm not trying to protect anyone apart from, let's say, people that need to be protected, like, let's say, innocent people in DRC Congo. So what they'll do is they'll gaslight and do things like, oh, so what are you doing for the country, or what can you do? They'll basically measure your circumstances with their privilege. So I'll repeat, what they'll do is they'll measure your circumstances with their privilege, and the audience, their target audience, won't be able to decipher the dynamics of the situation. And it sound almost like because they are, let's say, close to the people with shirts and ties, they are the ones that you should be listening to, because they will give the closest thing to, let's say, a change for the better. And the question is, the better of whom? But Yeah, but that's why it's problematic for them when somebody is also telling the truth, but they're not affiliated with any like evil group or anything like that. It becomes problematic, and this is why, let's say on these YouTube things, they have to block certain people and mangle algorithms and things like that, so that certain people don't get a voice. To be quite blunt. Um, so another things that I think I've noticed that from when I opened up this channel, I think people didn't like some of the disclaimers I used to put up. You know, when I put up the disclaimer stating that I'm not a Hebrew Islam, I'm not affiliated with any personal group, I'm not a Bantu, I don't support Pan Africanism or BLM or any movements alike. They got upset with that, and I know it upset some people badly. They handled it very badly. It's because they can't say the same thing for the special. It might say, for example, their whatever assignment they have involves, mimicking. They can't mimic that. They can't say the same. Not everybody can say that. Not everybody can, like the person, whatever cult person, group, evil cult person that's in the forefront. They cannot say comfortably that they are not affiliated with any evil people in that sense. So again, what they'll do is they'll measure your circumstances. They'll make references to, let's say, oh, you have a job, you work, you work for the Neanderthal, or you they could say anything. I don't know. They're just gaslight, or they'll basically try to exploit your circumstances, because part of their job is to understand bottom feeders. The bottom feeders is where they get their money from, if that makes sense. That's where they get their riches and wealth, on the bottom feeders. So they know certain things about the bottom feeders in that sense. But that's the only way if they're confronted, that's the only way they basically come with a comeback, makes sense. um anyway, going forward, they would also, what else do they do? Yeah, that's it. They also basically speak about Pepsi and Coke. So they'll put, so say for example, let's say within 1 month, the algorithms have been going mad about, let's say, Pepsi and Coke matters. Okay, um, what they'll do is they'll also speak on it to make it look like they are against it. So as before, they wouldn't be able to speak on it because there wasn't a correct way of tackling it. But now they'll basically speak on Pepsi and Coke matters as if they are not Pepsi and Coke themselves, if that makes sense. So it's like, I've used lot watched 8 Mile, when Eminem, before the rap, before his rap battle, the last one, he starts already dissing himself. I know you're gonna say this about me, I know say that about me. It's kind of like that. It's kind of like that. So it's like trying to, what's the word? Um Lessen the damage. But however, they're not actually lessening any damage, they're actually outright lying. So if it gets found out that, let's say for example, 1,000 continental Africans were hired to basically help support the spread of information that will be beneficial to the World Economic Forum. If that got found out and people that aren't affiliated with any group started speaking about it, um, what will happen is that the people that's been placed at the front, the little LLDs and stuff like that, that's been placed at the front to mangle information, they will speak about it as if that they are against it, if that makes sense. So this is why, with some of the information that I bring out, as a real person, you should be able to develop, who's speaking, where they're coming from, and then that's when you'll be able to learn that this person is lying and stuff like that. But that's just like one of the main methods. So it's just like gaslighting. So what you accuse them of, they would accuse you of, and the only reason why they can do that as well. That's it. I forgot to mention as well. So they've got backing now, or extra backing by social media, because obviously this is their house. I know I'm on it, and I'll explain further. Not now, but I'll explain further why I'm just speaking on here. If this is their house, I'll touch on that. Don't worry. But this is they've got for backing. So you know, some normal people, they were normal. I'm just using it for this conversation at the moment, but some people they may have realized that you know, if you've ever been on a panel, you'll make a comment and the comment disappears. Or what's the other thing? If you make a comment that is contrary, if you make a factual comment in to a cult member, or evil, to be precise, an evil cult that's specifically, let's say, against indigenous people, like the people inside the RC Congo, your comment would either disappear or it'll get pushed to the bottom. So you can use little methods like going to all these cult groups and see how they handle see how they handle contradictions, if that makes sense. Well, if you see if you're able to see it anyway. But I'm just saying there's lots of methods used to help them, and even like the dislike button. I hate that the dislike button was taken away. It should have stayed there, because the dislike button helps you to measure what's going on. I'm not going to go further into details about that, but the dislike button does help you measure what's going on. And I think it was partially removed because related to the Pepsi and Coke thing, but also related to the COVID thing, where there was a lot of you know, relates to what I'm talking about. There was a lot of negative comments about you know, the COVID thing on you know, on mainstream media accounts, YouTube accounts and stuff like that. And what was happening is that the information that was being channeled across you know, across the country was contrary to the comments under the accounts of these mainstream media companies. And by removing the dislikes, now you only see likes. So it looks like anybody that's been put at the forefront to you, it's just associated with likes, if that makes sense. Yes, they can argue that the dislike button can still be used to you know, mess to basically highlight that video that's in the interest of people, or to basically trigger something. I don't know whether they have a bot that triggers a video that has too much dislikes. But anyway, to put it quite blunt, it's the part of the Pepsi and Coke thing is why they took out the dislike thing as well. So what's happened now is, as everybody's getting squeezed out, the people that's at the forefront to you, they are basically more than likely, I won't say all of them will use your own, you know, use your own intuition to understand things, but most of them are basically there for Pepsi and Coke. So I like to look at it like this, okay? It's like a point system, okay? It's like a point system. So if you go online and you create an account, unless it's relating to cooking or anything like that, okay, if you try to start telling the truth about something, scandals, or even, or I don't know, something in sports that's behind the scenes about a famous sports player, I don't know, something like that, as soon as it's highlighted, you will get marginalized, and then there will be somebody else prepared to speak for that, because that's their job to do that, if that makes sense. And there'll be somebody, they would also have an opposition ready to speak about it. So what their job is to basically divert the impact, or regulate the impact of that scandal or of that information, if that makes sense. So that you know, it's not basically effective. You know, it's just like putting out a fire, basically. That's how they see it. So that's what's actually going on. But they're not invincible. You can still, I found quite a few channels and stuff online that that there's been proper truths out there. And these people, obviously, or these accounts, they're obviously quote unquote shadow banned. I'm starting to hate that word now, shadow banned. I don't even want to use it. But yeah, you will see that they're quote unquote shadow banned, and that's what another thing they're doing as well. So they're lying. I'm talking about the Pepsi and Coke situations. They would also lie that they are shadow banned, if that makes sense. let me put one thing straight, okay? There's enough evidence, okay, to highlight that people with an excess of 10,000 subscribers, okay, they'll they would already undergo. I can explain. I'm not even going to touch on that. Put it this way: you can't be if you've got an excess of, let's say, 100,000 subscribers. Not all of them are real. Okay, not only are not all of them real, it's you those subscriber amounts are usually associated with people that are basically that have contractual obligations with other parties and stuff like that. If you reach if you reach that, if you subscribe it, it's going to be easy for you to be online saying certain things, even if you're hinting. So I'd say if you have a lot 100,000 subscribers, but I'm being nice. I'm just using like a drastic amount. If you have 100,000 subscribers, okay, it's more than likely it's a Pepsi and Coke situation. That's just based on the way how the algorithms that are now. So the next question is like, so, why? What about BitChute stuff like the thing about BitChute and stuff like that? I think I've said it before. I did mention that. I don't know if have you ever heard of the term? What's the term? Like you get hackers and stuff like that, and what they do is like the intelligence agency, they'll grab them, or I don't know what they'll do after they grab them, but they manage to convince them to join them. Oh, they're impressed with the skills and stuff like that, and they become a white hacker. So I think it's that type of situation with some of these alternative online stream with BitChute. I think it's likely that's how that came about. Perhaps probably Rumble as well. I'm not too sure about Odyssey, but a couple of them as well. But a couple, and what it's obviously designed to do is what will end up happening is all the people that's actually trying to tell the truth, they'll go over there, but all the Pepsi and Cokes are actually running that. So let's say, for example, let's say for some strange reason, MR5 is running BitChute or is heavily involved in the algorithms inside BitChute. Okay, there'll also be like let's say like when I was talking about earlier with the projects thing with the cat, so to basically discredit that video by touching on some of your points. The mainstream media or can basically show that look at the outlandish claims made by these people, and then what will end up happening is that when these people are basically shown as complete idiots, you're also on there, so it makes it look like you're affiliated with them. So that's why another reason why I say I'm not affiliated. One, I'm not saying that nobody should use those alternative medias for streaming and stuff like that. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying you need to do it wisely and careful. I may eventually use some of them myself anyway, but I'm just saying I'm not in a rush to basically do that, because sometimes these people, these mainstream media, what they sometimes do is as well, they do stand in a karate stance. Like when you're standing in a karate stance, you're not actually attacking, but you're actually standing in a stance as if to say you're going to attack. So they can't basically stop. Like I've found channels on YouTube which basically say certain things that shouldn't be said, or it's not supposed to be said on YouTube, or you'll get blocked for. But anyway, I think I've touched enough on that. But yeah, just be aware of like the methods that they're using. They're gaslight. They're outright lying. Now, when I say outright lying, I literally mean outright lying. So they'll actually pretend like they are against, the wickeds and evil that's happening against Congo and other indigenous people around the world. They'll actually act and pretend that they are against some of the agendas that's been shown from, let's say, World Economic Forum and stuff like that. That will actually pretend and their target audience will basically. Speaking of target audience, some of these people they have bots and human bots, I'll say as well. They're there as well to basically make it look like there's a fire comment section, just so that you're aware. And this is why they're more bold now as well, just so that you're aware of how everything's going on. But anyway, that's like some of the methods they use. There's much more I can touch on. This is an unarranged live, so I don't want to go on too long. I'm going to touch a little bit on why evil gods push Angola's DRC Congo, and the reason why they do that is because, as you know, the limited company DRC Congo is basically run by not run by indigenous people. Hence, that's why. So if you want to take a little step back, let's talk about the history of Angola a little bit, or a bit of history in Angola. Actually, let me take another step back. As I was talking about Project Camelot is also associated with a man named David Walcott, who I showed in my last video. So in case again, how am I coming out of all these stuff randomly, or is this like timely? No, I already knew about this stuff, and I'm not saying that I don't know how to boast in that sense. That's not part of my biology to boast like that. I already just knew about this stuff. So with the David Walcott guys, I've watched his stuff from time ago as well, from 2000, and I've seen some of his stuff from 2009 even. But anyway, this geezer, David Wilcock, this is the same of all this is that anything that's been centralized to speak about, it ticks my boxes for investigation, if that makes sense. So so I'm just going to mention that a little bit, okay? Now let's rewind. I don't know if it's rewind or fast forward. Yeah, actually, it's a rewind now. 1960. Have you lot aware the method of the victim thing, where people get, when I was talking about ethnic distortion, where people get sacrificed, and then after the sacrifice, there's beneficiaries of that group of people that's been sacrificed, and you end up finding out that some of the sacrifice aren't actually related to the beneficiaries of that sacrifice. You know that system. Remember, I showed some of you the map of. I showed you all the map of the Jews of Africa and stuff like that. Yeah, you already know the map. I don't even know. I hope I don't have to explain that in detail for you. I actually, because what it is yeah, I genuinely don't like to attack, because I know what I'm like. I have witnesses. Remember when I told you with the red account? I've grown up a lot. But there's this. I know how to clap back. I know how to get close and matching. What's the word I'm looking for? I know how to get close and matching. You know, immoral behavior, if that makes sense. Not that I'm immoral, but if somebody says something really bad, I know how to say something really bad back, and I'll obviously come away from that. Not only that as well, I'm non-probation, and as you know, there's information police and stuff like that. That's why in the past few years, I'm really like, I want to make sure that nobody can say I said this to them or said that to them, and then because there's people out here that are basically police officers, and I'm against against the so-called black community as well. But yeah. So when I got a tongue twister a second. Yeah. So yeah, I know how to basically clap back. So when we go back to that period of time in around 1960 or 1950, that there was a war in Angola. It was the MPLA versus the AD. I can't remember what it was called again, but I'm just going to break it down to you a little bit. Okay, it was basically an alleged civil war, which I say partially the fault of the Western world and the Portuguese and stuff like that, but also partially a result of it was a situation as well. I'll say in relation to usurping. Okay, so what ended up happening is, as you should know, when I showed you in the index, you should know by now, stations of old, um, they basically, if you they basically run the trade in that sense, and what will end up happening is conflict would actually so over a period of time of running the well, let me move, use this Sabini for life, or Savimbi a good guy. Savimbi Sabini for life is Savimbi the geezer with the beard from MPLA. I'd say I'm not too sure, I don't think to be Sabini for life. I think he was Pepsi and Coke. Okay, Sabini for life. Savimbi was Pepsi and Coke. The same way the mastermind for the Igbo and the Biafra rebellion, he was Pepsi and Coke as well. Listen, I'm not saying this out of like I don't know if you heard me during the beginning of the conversation. I have nothing against Bakongo people or Angolan people in general, but I will speak out against the leads, if that makes sense, or people working with the leads. Even if I find out it's yourself, I'll start saying stuff to yourself. I don't know who you are, but I'm just speaking generally. And even as I had a conversation with somebody else, even Patrice Lumumba entering things that he shouldn't enter into. So I'm not sparing nothing, if that makes sense. It's simply about truth and obviously moving forward to that and helping indigenous people in DRC Congo. But yeah, I know it's a long-winded response. I'll go back to say Savimbi, he was likely Pepsi and Coke. And I'm saying this because, as I mentioned earlier, the sacrificial related phenomenon that goes on where a group of people, a war is encouraged, a group of people die, the remnants of the people that die claim the hardship, but you later find out that they're not actually biologically the same people that got sacrificed. And this goes back to what I was talking about with ethnic distortion. So when we go back to the MPLA versus the AD something, when I summarize it, it was basically the stations of the owners of the station of old, i.e., Kingdom of Congo, fighting for the throne, and instigated by the Portuguese. So what ended up happening is that some of the people that was imposing the MPLA, okay, they were highlighting that they are the actual descendants of the Bakongo people from the Kingdom of Congo, okay, and they were backed by the U.S. government and other governments that was backing the U.S. government with them as well. And Mobutu would have been involved in that as well because he comes from the same connections of old. When I say connections of old, so you lot need to understand that all these leaders and stuff like that, they all know each other and they get their family groups to mix with one another. So that's why they all back each other in that sense. Similar to like like when you got like the royal family, they're all connected. It's just, then this thing goes back to ancient times. Even if you go into ancient Egyptian, so-called ancient Egyptian, um, kings from different areas, they'll marry each other or they'll give kings to each other. And if you go to some I don't even want to use the word African, let me stick to DRC Congo. If you go to some DRC Congo traditions, different kings, they'll give a king might give his daughter to another king, and then they'll obviously have a child of that as a, it's just a custom that used to go on. But this custom used to go on in the occult world of those 1950s, 1940s, even up to 1930s as well. So going back to, before I drift off the subject and go into another subject, go back onto that. After that war got instigated, a truce eventually would have been called, and then there was no more fighting between the descendants of the Kingdom of Congo versus the people of northern Angola, but specifically in the Zombo area, and going down a little bit to, let's say, the Bundu and southern Mbundu people. A truce got called, and then after that truce, okay, they were squabbling for power again. And this is when I would say I'll say maybe I'd say likely, I'd say I don't know whether to say precisely the British, but I think then a lot of people don't know about this. I'm not going to go too much into it. I'll say the British via America, or the British, and they'll try and use Portugal as another LTD. They they was involved for the last war again. So there was a war that, and then there was a truce, and then there was another war. Okay, and that's the war that led to an ethnic distortion related incident that I'm talking about, and then this led to loads of groups of Angolan ending up in what we know today as Congo Central. Okay, Congo Kinshasa. Okay, and then these groups ended up, some of them ended up in privileged positions, in the same context as how when some um, Hutu people fled into DRC Congo, they ended up in privileged conditions. Because I don't know if you know, Hutu people and the indigenous people of DRC Congo, they are not related. Okay, it's a different branch of a group that may have some similar languages to some people in the east of Congo, but if you conflate that to mean that they are the same biological people as the people in DRC Congo, that's not exactly factual. That's not exactly factual, but I'm just giving an example, and you'll understand the Pepsi and Coke thing a bit better, as I explained previously before, and I actually showed it to you. And hence why they didn't like that video that I'd done, the Bantu Expansion Live video part 7, I think it was. I touched a little bit on that, highlighting Pepsi and Coke. But anyway, yeah, so same with the huge people. Same the Igbo Biafra War. Same thing with the Luba against Luba civil war. There was beneficiaries out of that. The same thing with even the Batetela. See, here we go. Right. My lineage come from the so-called Tetela's not a real tribe, but I'm just saying, even out of that, the beneficiaries of that are the descendants of the people that was oppressing the indigenous people inside Sankoho or former Kasai province, if that makes sense. So it's the same method. It's not unknown, if that makes sense. And this leads to the DNA thing as well, how they misrepresent people with DNA and stuff like that. But yeah, so going back to the subject, so these people from Angola would have been in privileged positions. Remember, the key word I said was Mobutu as well. So Mobutu obviously helped them and help get in privileged positions as well. And partially the reasons for this as well is because they was part of the same scheme, some of them, that Mobutu came from the late 20th century, or Mobutu's father came from, if that makes sense. So it was basically a fight to control the station of old, if that makes sense. There was just basically over it. And after that, these people that became in privileged position, they ended up becoming at the forefront for expression, or let's say, I don't want to use the word expression too tough, but I'll just use the word expression now for the expression of, let's say, DRC Congo. And it was, and the indigenous people inside the RC Congo would have followed along to it innocently, if that makes sense. And this is when Congo was on the rise, and that's where you had like the Muhammad Ali fight going on in there and stuff like that. And the only reason why Congo was on the rise is because Mobutu was ticking the CIA's boxes, if that makes sense. He was ticking all the boxes, doing all stuff. He probably tried to do a little bit of good at the end, and that's what basically messed him up. Not only that as well, there's other stuff to go into it. Congo history is so complex, it's nuts. But anyway, these people would have been in certain positions. This is where you get the Jean-Pierre Bemba. He's from the same lineage of people from Angola. Felix Chilombo, same lineage of people from Angola. So they're all with one another. Even the old president. Remember, I was talking about the mixed lineages. That president of Angola, he's got lineages connected to the trade as well. Like very likely connected to the trade that would have run across all the way to Mozambique back then. So when we when we look at this like from a bird's eye view, from a sparrow's view, we get to understand that the in, let's say, in privileged positions, okay, they are basically acting as the host or the representation, like the Pan Africans are. So the Pan Africans, they get a panel full of loads of Shikedi is not Congolese. Okay, Etienne Shikedi, I say, because I go by the mother's line, he's not Congolese in that sense. And even we use the word Congolese, Sibeni for life. Sibeni for life, where are you from, by the way? I just want to ask, I just want to clarify. But when I say he's not Congolese, he's basically his lineage and his is with Angola, and he's not originally the history is the history from the history of the region where he's allegedly from as well. Is there's a little bit of a flaw in the history as well, if that makes sense. I can show it to you, and I'm not saying this with chest for no reason. I can literally show it to you. That as he's got ties to them. That's why, for example, I'll put it like this. Okay, that's why when they was talking about truth talks with Paul Kagame, the you know like the you know like when the Pan Africans do the debates and stuff like that. Lorenzo, the Angolan president, was like the moderator, if that makes sense. I'm from Dando Zomba tribe. I remember, yeah, that's it. Yeah, I'm from Dando and Muzomba tribe. Yeah, I remember, that's it. Yeah, so that's why I go on to say that it's Felix Shikedi, his ties is with Angola. He's a Pepsi and Coke situation. I highlighted before because people always think that, oh, look, he's corrupt. There's nothing to do with corruption. You know, they're murderers. They're there to murder. That's their job. And that's what I don't understand. That's what our people don't understand. You're supposed to simplify it like that. When you simplify it like that, okay, your rationale into understanding what's happening to indigenous people inside DRC Congo begins to change, and it begins to change for the better, and you become more effective. But obviously, what's going to come with that is people try to silence you, if that makes sense. So he's ties. So remember him, Jean Pierre Bemba. There's another one as well. I can't remember his name, but they've all got ties to the same station of old. Okay, so now as you mentioned, Bazombo. I don't know if you watched some of my videos before, or I'm speaking generally to everyone as well. Remember when I highlighted about this Haile Selassie thing and how they use music to influence the masses, and they was channeling Bob Marley to basically put out an expression for the whole of Jamaica. So that technique has also been used in different African countries. And when it concerns DRC Congo, what they would have done is try to use some people who were claiming to be Bakongo. So Sebeni for life, you can correct me if I'm wrong. Are you aware of any issues, past issues about people, let's say Bakongo people, but let's say closer to the coast, okay? I don't know what they call them, Banyang or whatever, I can't remember their name. And Buzomba, sometimes there's a little bit of friction conflicts about Bazombo and other people at that part of the north, are they Bakongo people or not? And that comes from the wars that's talking about. That's why sometimes there's a little bit of debate about, are these people Bakongos or are they not? Yes, you're aware. So yeah, that's what. So yeah, so that's what I'm basically highlighting as well. So what they was doing is they're squabbling for the what's the word I'm looking for? They're squabbling for the power. I'd say is the power that's connected to the West. So what they'll do is they'll try and push that through music as well, if that makes sense. So this is why you have that exposure to certain music and stuff like that. And I don't know if you notice, okay, after Kabila's presidential. I'm talking about the Rwandi after he went in and killed the other person got killed. The same thing happened with music in a synchronized order for the other person who I'm saying has ties to Angola, and he what's to say again? I'm gonna jump the gun. Let me go back. Sorry, let me go back. So with with the Angola thing, what's happening is that in the past, I don't know if you're aware, they used to use Angola to basically kill the people in the east of Congo. When I say Angola, I'm not talking about the random people. I'm talking about the army. Okay, the Angola army, like the army of old. Like the same way you've got the West African Frontier Force armies of old. Running up to Sierra Leone, helping people protect the diamond mines and stuff like that. You've got the Sahel regions run by the CIA and stuff like that, and the French government, the armies of old terrorizing people. It's the same sort of thing. So they used to get those people to kill the people in the east of Congo when the people in the east of Congo is trying to basically live on their own land, in other words, and protect their own land. And people from Zimbabwe as well. That's why Zimbabwe is heavy in the Pepsi and Coke thing as well. Zimbabwe is very in the Pepsi and Coke thing. And they would have been heavy from that because of obviously their obviously last prolific president. But anyway, Angola also during that period of time as they was putting and going out at the forefront, that was, I think it was around the same time they also there's if you go to the north, if you go off the coast of DRC Congo, specifically DRC Congo, and you go north a little bit, the oil that's around that bit of the sea area is actually owned by Angola as well. It should be classified as being owned in DRC Congo territory, but it's actually owned by Angola as well. So I'm just giving an example, and all this would have been channeled through the connections with the stations of old, from the Kingdom of Congo up until the King Leopold's arrival, up until Congo Central, and the highlighting of the capital. There's a lot of Pepsi and Coke happening here in Namibia. Oh yeah, I'd like to know a bit more about it. And Nashali Nalembi, I think you should share some information about what's happening in Namibia as well. It'll be very interesting. And yeah, and thanks for logging in. But yeah, I'm just giving an example of why Angola's pushed. So now when we go into the cults and stuff like that, I'm going to specifically, because partially why I've done this video as well, because I think the other day I went into one of the more videos. I'm not going to mention the guy's name, but I actually used to listen to some of this guy's stuff when I was, I think, how old was I? I think I was about 22. Yeah, this guy had done a video talking about Congo and stuff like that, and he mentioned Simon Toko stuff like that, and I was thinking, what is the issue? Like, why are you all pushing Simon Toko? That's nothing to do with the interiors of DRC Congo. He's from the, let's say, the Congo people. This phenomenon is associated with Angola, and the reasoning about Angola and DRC Congo's affiliation mainly stems from, I'm talking about modern affiliation, okay? We can put it in different contexts when we talk about the slave trade, but I'm talking about a modern affiliation. It comes post 1960, when groups of people from the north, from Angola, ran into DRC Congo, and now the people that was that were made to supplant people inside DRC Congo, they are basically those ones in privileged positions. They are the one now basically acting as the host, if that makes sense. So it's like, how can I explain these? I don't want to say something. Right, I'll put it like this: those people pushing the Angola thing and interchanging Congo with DRC Congo is starting to look a bit more reckless and deliberate, which is fine. But at the same time, it's like misleading anybody that doesn't really go on, but it's not actually tribalism. It's actually that Angola has its own history, and it has obviously nice people there as well. However, just because you've got that story there and you're highlighting it to DRC Congo doesn't make you look like you're a revolutionary, if that makes sense, or anything like that. In fact, it makes you just look like an agent, like anybody, like all those other people, if that makes sense. Not only that as well, it makes it even more suspicious. There's like another there's like a reevaluation of the of the Congo conference going on at the moment, on the basis that it may be that they didn't do enough in what they've done in the past in DRC Congo. So like one of the things I'll like I can highlight is that King Leopold's troops and stuff like King Leopold, when Leopold's troops went into DRC Congo, there was they went for the Mongo people and populations like them further in the northeast and some parts of the east. It wasn't the Bakongo people. It wasn't even quote unquote today's what we are calling exactly Lubakasai people. It actually wasn't. No, no, no. And I'm not saying to be mean. I'm just saying this. It's factual. And what happens is when people are pushing the letter, they say, "Oh, King Leopold," because some that's it. This is why I mentioned it as well. The Moorish guy, he made reference to Leopold's letter, and he also made reference to obviously the Simon Soccer stuff like that. I'm saying, why are you scrambling it all together? It doesn't make sense. Because when they was talking about the gods and that, people need to understand, and this during the stations of old, okay, when people was getting captured, they were being told to speak the language of the station, and they was being told to obey the god of the station. This is why if you go and if you go just after Congo Central and start seeing this trust their name for their own god. Where does the 1 minute? I'm going to read your question, 7 if you like. So if you just go after Congo Central, you will see that they still have their names for their own gods and stuff like that. So but the colonial language was basically their language from the stations of old, specifically stemming from Angola, and even the language that is being used, a lot of it is actually a bootleg of the old language, and it's basically there's people saying they speak Kikongo when they're actually speaking Congo Yaleta. Congo Yaleta is basically an extra hybrid version of the real language of the people that spoke Bakongo languages in Angola. And even the Europeans, even the linguists made mistakes about this, and they've even highlighted these mistakes as well. I'm just mentioning this is that it was a trade language, similar to how what they tried to coin as Bobangi, which was basically Losengo. That wow, it wasn't. That's another subject, but anyway, Lingala trade language as well that developed as a trade language as well. And what happens sometimes a trade language, there'll be a mutual word for the name of God, or a mutual word for the name of a river, a mutual word for animal that's being traded or whatsoever. But it doesn't mean that these people had the same word for it. They had their own words and stuff like that. Because you need to remember, DRC Congo, if you look at it rationally, it's about, let's say, what, 12 countries inside there. When I say 12 countries, 12 people, 12 people that you can put together and say, oh, look, that these are their own people. But the Mongo people generally have a consistency in terms of links, because they are, if you look at it technically, they are the people that can be interlinked more consistently to form like a larger clade, if that makes sense. But when you look at when you go closer to the coastal area, that's where you see many of that Bakongo going up to Republic of Congo as well. And as I said before, I'll repeat again, This is why when Leopold came, he basically made reference to this is what they pray to. This is they submit to one God. This that. If you go into the what's the word? If you go into east, more to the east of Congo, where there's Baba Mongo as well, had a reference the Most High. I'm just giving a highlight. That's how far they went into. So this is also highlighting that where the atrocities took place, okay, it wasn't on the coast, if that makes sense. And I'm just highlighting. So whilst people pushing the Angola and DRC Congo thing to be interchangeable, and obviously it's about resources as well, if that makes sense. There's people out there that actually think that if they're looking at it as an opportunity, if that makes sense, to try to I don't know, assist in the exploitation so that they can get their fair share. I'm not stupid. I don't have any physical power. I don't feel I can stop somebody from getting on a plane and buying the land. If that's what you think that I think I'm trying to stop, then you've probably, well, I would like to think that I've helped stop some things, but if you think that I can stop some. I'm thinking that I can literally grab someone and stop them in plane. That's not the case. It's just basically bringing out the truth that they can't afford to have out, because these people are basically outright lying now. So all this, all of this is about basically to benefit, let's say, resources as well, and also try to demonize DRC Congolese people as well at the same time. So I'm just reading your comment now, Sir Beneath for Life. Where does the Congo Angola term come from? It starts with, I'm speaking about now in modern times, it starts with like the DNA testing thing and stuff like that, and it's mainly say I'll start with the DNA thing, specifically like 23andMe, because what we don't understand is psychologically when they advertise these groupings via DNA and with the Pan Africans as well, what they'll do is they'll, with the Pan African agents, they think together, or if they talk, say for example, we all know coltan and cobalt or mainly comes from the Congo, right? What the agents have to do, they'll say our resources. They'll use the words our resources. They won't, as if to say that it's already theirs. Do you get what I'm trying? So it's like so if the information gets too granular in terms of dialogue, and somebody ends up mentioning Congo, they'll mention Angola as well, or or if somebody's Angolan and is working with them, they'll conflate the Bakongo term and conflate it to DRC Congo to make it look like they have a stake, if that makes sense. They have a stake in what's happening inside DRC Congo, when in reality they don't. And in reality, some of them are outright helping and assisting, the so-called powers that be. So that's where the Congo Angola comes from, mainly in these social groups and that. But if you're talking about, if I've read your message wrong, Sebin, if you're saying where does Congo come from in the actual term, I would personally say, in terms of how it's nationalized, it came from the Bakongo people in Angola, who named the section of their rivers Congo. I think there's a river in Angola called Congo back in the days, and there also was obviously another region named Zadi, and they pronounced properly, they called it Zaire River, which all stems in Angola, if that makes sense. When they when after the name changed to after Leopold's reign, the country name got changed. Like Phoenix Moon says, what she say? You woke up in how can you wake up in Zaire and then wake up in DRC Congo the next day? Say a private something private that I love at. But anyway, when you look at when I was talking about, remember I was talking about the Mobutu affiliations with Angola and stuff like that of old, and the president, stuff like how it's all linked. That is why the name was adopted, because of that connection, if that makes sense. Especially remember 1960 as well. If you heard me during the conversation with the Angolans going into Congo in the 1960s and getting into positions based on the hardship narrative, which is which is a systematic technique used across the world. That is how they also used the Angolan river name to name the whole of DRC Congo when it was called Zaire at that time, when Mohammed and stuff like that. Hence why today, so the Banyamulenge Congolese people. See, that's what I mean. There's no such thing as a when I go back. So it's like if I say Albania Malenga Congolese, I can give you two questions. I can be a cunt and say, I'm not being a cunt to you now. I'm saying I can be a cunt and say Albania Malenga people from the Kingdom of Congo, and rightfully you'll say Banyamulenge are not from the Kingdom of Congo, and which is correct. She came to when ready to go for him. Literally, people got arrested. I think he went to not far from where he had like a conference in London. I think it was about 4 years ago. He said they are, and he's acting according to the papers. You know, the professionals who set up these things, and on paper, if like I said before, if if they are the employers, if they are the employees, if the Banyamulenge are the employees of that limited company, then yes, they are part of that limited company. But are they indigenous to the land that's been invaded? No, they are not. Are they biologically the same? No, they are not. The DNA companies who work obviously with the people, they will make it appear like that. There's clever doing it, like 23andMe does. I don't know if you've seen them. So let's say Banyamulenge, okay, their DNA results will come up, and the head section of their DNA it would show Congolese in southern Eastern Africa. So what ends up happening is when this category ends up in the West, and no disrespect to the unaware Pan Africans in the Americas, when they will think, oh look, you know, Congolese and Angolan Congolese, when it doesn't actually mean that. It's just this deceitfully grouped together to make it appear like a homogeneous group. So yeah, that's my response to that. So they're not indigenous to the interiors of DRC Congo. They're part of the limited company, and because our people have all stupidly or innocently stupidly championed these nationalities, the Banyamulenge can say they are part of that limited company, but they can't say that they are indigenous to DRC Congo. That's a complete separate thing. Complete separate thing. There wasn't when King Leopold sent his troops from the West African Frontier Force and from East Africa, he and the coasts of the land, it wasn't the Banyamulengers hands and feet were getting chopped off. It wasn't the Banyamulenge that were getting forced to harvest gaucho. It was Mongo people, if that makes sense. Satura, welcome back, good brother. What's good, Satura? Yeah, long time. Let me just put your comment. So I hope I've answered your question. Welcome back, brother. I hope you've been good, doing well. What happened to your other videos, fam? I need the band to. Oh yeah. I'm gonna put them up. I'm just putting them up slowly because before I went off again, I know I went off again and I didn't tell anyone. I didn't really give a shit because anyway, other details about that. There's just funny business going on with my account before I went off, and that's partially one of the reasons why I went off as well. I think I might have upset not like the basic people or the LLDs on here, but I think I've upset some people that I didn't expect to upset, and that's why I went off. And I'm just putting little things at a time that's relevant. So I've got the ban up there, but all the other parts I haven't put up there because I think some people are trying to mangle algorithms related to my content because as we know, these people, they feel that they are the owners of your actual expression, and we're in the age now where people are even comfortable with acting as usurpers. So it's and the funny thing is as well. So I don't want to go off subject too much, Satura. The funny thing is as well is like as we all know, DRC Congo is a shithole country. I'm talking about in terms of the limited company. I'm not talking about the people, or I'm not talking about the indigenous people. I'm talking about in general terms. Okay, we know that the company's in shambles. All right. Um, we have to ask a question: why would some people want to be affiliated with the most poorest, scruffy-looking people on the planet? Like that calls a question. Why would you want to be associated with us? Why do you want to conflate, like in relation to discussion, why do people want to conflate Angola to equal DRC? The questions has to be asked, and it relates a little bit to what I just said about the banter expansion line things. There's people, I don't know who some of these people are. I'm going to be honest. I have an idea, but I don't know who. But there's some people that have an interest, and where they want to go with it, I don't know. And if we go back to the Pepsi and Coke thing, there might be people that try to minimize some of the points that I made in it, because some of the points that I made in it, I didn't realize the impact of it to that degree as well, if that makes sense. I know what's his name? The geezer's name. He was part of that Bantu thing. I know that Jonathan Shilombo. I know he at the early stages. I think like he was quite impressed with some of the stuff in that. And I think after that, when some of I think his followings or people from the environments that he comes from, when they came in, I think other things came in with that as well. And then I don't know, just funny business started going on with some of my electronics and stuff like that. So that's why I'm just putting stuff out bit by bit, and I don't want people to snap certain things, if that makes sense. So yeah, that's why. But thanks for hopping in, Satura. I appreciate it. But yeah, going back onto what I was saying after speaking about our Banyamulenge Congolese, the same applies to Tutsi people. And again, I'm sure every Banyamulenge and every Tutsi person isn't a bad person. Then not every Tutsi person or not every Banyamulenge person is a Paul Kagame and stuff like that. In fact, some of those people may be used as the, what I was talking about earlier, the sacrifice and claim hardship phenomenon that occurs, and then you have beneficiaries after. But yeah, so that's just in summary. That's just in summary. There's people that are going to stay. Um, so there's going to be changes to how health is organized around the world and stuff like that. That will obviously determine what type of people are going to be trying to get into the Congo in the near future. As we already know, they've tried to station themselves in places like Uganda, Rwanda, as in a way that even suggests that they're actually trying to pretend that they're going back to their lineage. Like the cult groups that are actually presenting that, oh, they're going to, like obviously Uganda's not on the coast of West Africa, Rwanda's not on the coast of West Africa, but the DNA companies, etc., they'll present and the Pan Africans, they'll present information that makes it appear like they're going back to their roots, if that makes sense. But really, it's all about DRC Congo, to be quite front. And if somebody thinks that I'm saying it in a way where like mind you, this channel is about people indigenous in DRC Congo, and not only that as well. If you think that is something to do boastfulness, it's not. Okay, it's like, why do these people want to be affiliated with DRC Congo? Not only that as well, why are you supporting limited companies that thrive of killing indigenous people, and then put yourself at the forefront like you are doing a favor for people to find their lineage, and basically brushing out other stories, if that makes sense. So it's like, yeah, it's a bit ridiculous. um got another comment here. I'm going to get ready to leave in about 5 minutes. From Congo, where else do GSC people reside today on the continent? And what can GSC people do to avoid usurpers? Yeah, good question. I just apart from Congo, yeah, I they're when I go onto my geography, my geography brain, yeah, they're across the whole world, to be honest. They're across the whole world. Most of them have moved out of DRC Congo and hope for a better life. Um, but that's actually a small margin. You know, I don't want to go off topic in the Charlie Nalembu. When you analyze the statistics properly, there's only a small percentage of people. I, I don't. I'm not going to say small. You. What I'll say it like this. Yeah, it will look like there's lots of people that's fled Congo, but that's not actually the case. If that makes sense, that's not actually the case. It's when you look at the percentage in comparison to the indigenous population inside DRC Congo, there's a big difference. There's a big difference. But anyway, and I'm just saying this to highlight that obviously people from DRC Congo, they've gone to Sweden, Australia, Belgium. And when I say it looks like a lot of people's fled, because a lot of them are concentrated in specific areas in Europe. Like let's say, for example, let's say there'll be loads of a concentration of Congolese people in Belgium, or I'm talking about the indigenous ones. Or let's say in France, you can go to a place called Châteaurouge. Um, there, there's a large concentration population there as well. If you broadcast that in a specific way, it will make it look like loads of Congolese people have left, when that's not exactly the case. But in regards to where they reside, obviously there's a big diaspora from Sweden, Norway, obviously here in the UK, Australia. Um, some are in Kenya as well. Kenya, you got some in Kenya. You got a population in South Africa as well, where Satu Ra's from. Um, you've got some in Angola, but the main ones in Angola are the ones that's had affiliations in the past. But the ones that doesn't have affiliation with Angola, they actually get kicked out of Angola. So that's another thing as well. What the Pan Africans don't go about. So you know, as earlier during the conversation, I made mention about they sent the Angolan troops to kill the people in the east of Congo through aeroplanes, by bombing them, and people from Zimbabwe to bomb indigenous people in DRC Congo and the east of Congo. They um, they also kick out DRC people fleeing from atrocities happening in DRC Congo when they try to run into Angola. So I'm mentioning some people running in Angola. I'm guessing some people may be as far as Namibia. I won't be surprised if a Congolese person can find his way all the way to the east of Europe somewhere. I'm sure I'm sure some in Namibia. I'm talking about in a modern sense, and if you're also referencing in a historical sense, okay, when we sideline every single Pan African promoted history, and every bias history against indigenous people, especially against people that's had atrocities on them, like the people in Namibia, specifically the Herero people and some of the Dama people, and the Mongo populations specifically, based on, this is going to sound a bit mad, but I'll just be case of that we can say that there would have been people in Namibia as well. On the base, I'm speaking solely on the basis on who the Germans were basically angry at. So when in the biological sense, when they went during those during the 19th century, when they went to Africa, and this is what Pan Africans don't like. There's Africans that they liked, and there's Africans that worked with them. Okay, and then there's some Africans that they don't like. It's almost like a instinct thing, you know, like when if a dog sees a fox or something like that, a bloodhound or something like that sees a fox, it will just goes mad. It's almost like that, if that makes sense. And that's how that's like almost like a marker in a way to know like who is who, if that makes sense. So that's where some of the affiliation comes from, accompanied by that bizarre analysis that I gave. There is striking similarities, which I highlighted before, with some family names, and some of them are not. Some of the languages aren't exactly intelligible, but there's some key names that are strikingly the same. And remember, I mentioned something. So I don't know how. I don't know if you can, but the key thing to understanding is that artificial ethnic grouping, which is called Twa, um, it's related to that in terms of the distance. Because I'll give you an example, Nashali. Okay, there should be a strong consistency with some of the languages there, with, let's say, the Mbundu and the Bakongo people, but it actually shifts, if that makes sense. So, for example, let's say like I'm sure you'd have the leopard totem there. So, like let's say like the totem in amongst the Bakongo Angolan people, they might say Ngo, Yingo, with the silent Y. Um, but I think some people in Namibia, they're saying Nkoi, if that makes sense. You can correct me if I'm wrong, okay? Um, I'm not saying every single people in Namibia, but I'm just saying there will be some people groups that will use the word koi or koi. So that means that there's a jump somewhere, like there, because you know when you look at the languages, okay, when they done their when the linguists mapped out languages and stuff like that, and there's areas where you can see like a deviation, if that makes sense. I made a strong totogwe, totogwe, kwe, 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 kwe. Ah, okay, my bad. So is that in Owambo language, or is that generally every single Namibian that says totogwe? Tell me even if I pronounce that correct. But so I can't use that sometimes representative of trade. So, for example, if you've got like there's the artist, and I say this respectfully, Lubakasai, if you've got that artificial grouping, okay, um, you'll have the word. One of their main areas is called Bujimai, okay, but when you remember, I made the claim. I made the claim if there was any groups of people that would have been around the Great Lakes regions, and obviously the Great Lake regions is Uganda, let's say, okay. The people in Uganda, they'll say Mbuzi, okay, and then if there would have been any trade going on, of course, it doesn't mean that there was a movement of people from specifically Uganda to Lubuksa, but if you have a movement of people, they'll they would obviously, if that makes sense, because of obviously the trade. Or one boss say to Tongwe. Okay, all right, I got you now. Yeah, to Tongwe. Yeah, no, that's interesting. Yeah, that's see the Totogwe can of the Kwe also be corrects me if I'm wrong. Kwe, and if you can just clarify to me what Kwe means, or when the term Kwe will be used in line with another. But anyway, going back to what I was saying with the word Buji, there's different variations of that name for goats, if that makes sense. So it's just to highlight like consistencies of words. And why did I mention this with Bakongo? I mentioned this with Bakongo because what ended up happening is that there's strong. It appears that there's strong influences from the Latin language, and some of that influence would have come from what was spoken with the Congo Yaleta. Because I actually think that I actually feel that the Bakongo language, like the oldest, or where the Bakong or where the Kikongo language actually came from, I think that that language is basically near enough become extinct, if that makes sense. Because I actually believe Congo Yaleta has actually been championed as Kikongo. I actually think I've actually witnessed it. I won't say think that's what I'm witnessing when I look around. So there's obviously a jump somewhere. What obviously happened is, to be quite blunt with you, Noshad and Nalembu, at some period of time, it probably would have been around 15th century, at least from the north of Angola, or let's say what we know as Congo, Brazzaville, or today's Congo Central, and they got shifted downwards into, or pushed downwards into um, Namibia, and locations where what we call Himba people in Angola, to those locations. I don't believe some of those people called Himba and some other people groups in Namibia, I don't feel that they was always there exactly. And I think that this mass move happened in recent times. When I say recent, I'm talking about it happened in conjunction with slave trade activities, I'd say. I know it sounds very I know it sounds a very strong claim, but this doesn't apply to everybody in Namibia. But I'm just saying this is solely on the basis there's a town north in Namibia called Ongwe Vidya, meaning leopard that runs fast. I'm interested in Ongwe Diva. I'll put that out. That's interesting. I'll make a note of that. Yeah, there's a strong shift, if that makes sense. There's a strong shift. Not only that, as well, in some of the cult groups, I remember um, when the when some of the when some of the people that was championing the Angolan thing as the savior for let's say DRC Congo, they tried to make, at first I noticed them making reference to people in Namibia being the Hamites. So obviously, when we look at this phenomenon, Emily, is obviously to suggest that they are not part of the you are not part of the club, if that makes sense. Or I'm not saying you or Wumble people. I'm just talking about whoever they consider to be in Namibia, if that makes sense. So it's just easy to look at things that way, and then you end up finding out who's been put to the side, who's been put to the front, who's been put to the middle, who's trying to pretend to be who, and who's trying to usurp. And I forgot to mention how to avoid usurping. The thing is, you can't actually avoid usurping. To be honest, you can make it impossible for your for, you can make it very, I won't say impossible, you can make it very difficult for your history to be removed, if that makes sense. Hence I've done the ban to expansion thing. You can make it very difficult for your history to move, but you can't stop someone from actually usurping, especially like I said earlier, with the Pepsi and Coke thing. You've got the people behind YouTube, Google, Facebook, and stuff like that. They help these people that's been put at the front in black community. So if they are usurping or running a usurping program, you're not how you going to stop that. We're going to do running their office and put a Colt 45 to their head or something. You can't exactly stop that. But if you have your history there, okay, when they try to change that, there's always going to be a reference point to what really happened. Hence why some of our ancestors put stuff in stone. Hence why some of our ancestors reflect what's in it, if that makes sense. They reflected what's within our fingerprints. Hence why I also like to highlight, you can't basically change your fingerprint. And remember, things happen anyway to basically come against that. So everything that they do, they're always going to be clumsy, and they're always going to leave clues that they did usurp. So that's why, like, that I would say you can't really stop them, but you can basically highlight that one day when somebody finds out, and they will, that there's a usurper within their midst, there will be a reference from the actual people group that they left there. Hence why I'm still able to bring out certain information that people didn't think existed. So some of these usurpers from neighboring countries of DRC Congo. If I didn't exist, okay, it would have it would have been more of a smooth ride for them to lie about DRC Congo's history or try to change it in the process. But now it's a little bit more problematic for the Pan Africans as well to merge everything together. Is because we've left traces of our history. Not only that, we've highlighted it. And remember when I was talking about clumsiness, and it's not because we're exactly leaving it there for a purpose, it's just by accident. Like how I mentioned in the Banter Expansion Live series part 2, entitled Accidental Honesty. That's what accidental honesty is clumsiness, that they are destined to clumsiness. And I'm very comfortable now to say that, and now say it with chest. They are they are destined to clumsiness. So they will always, so all these open black faces as well, they will always leave traces of who they really are, that they're usurped, and they're just in for a ticket to exploit and stay on their immoral success ladder. That's what I'd say. But yeah, um so that's what I was saying in regards to usurping. And that, I think I'm gonna close off now. I've exceeded a bit of time. If you've got any last questions before I leave, let me know. Yeah, I will be putting out some extra video. I'm not gonna bite back in some things that I want to say as well. I'm just being a little bit more straightforward now, if you've noticed, than I was last year and the year before. The only reason that is because my probation is nearly ending. So literally, I'm literally so happy. I'm like own as well. So as my probation is nearly ending, anyone that can, if somebody says something, I'm not gonna be, I'm not gonna be how, anyway, I'm still gonna be, mature. I'd say I won't use the word professional because I don't abide to anybody's standards of professionalism. But yeah, I'm just gonna say things how it is, and if people don't like it, they don't like it. If they can't handle how my demeanor was last year before, then boy, then now they're gonna do now. But anyway, apart from, I tried to block as well quite a few of the Bantu cult groups and stuff like that. I don't know these people, to be honest, but I just don't want them coming on here um to basically knock me off thing. I'd rather have, like, a solid conversation with a few people, and solid discussion, rather than people coming with their bots and their and stealing content and repackaging the content so that they don't sound like they're part of Pepsi and Coke when they are, like that. So that's why I need to basically a bit more straightforward. So some people, if they do, this isn't a this isn't a threat. It's a little bit of a promise. Um, I don't know some of these people, but if they come and they literally try to I don't know, repackage something, or try to pretend I don't know what's going on, as far as trying to misdirect a certain information or something like that, or about certain people, I'm going to say it directly how it is, and I'm going to highlight certain things that they probably don't want to be highlighted. So yeah, I'll just put it like that. But apart from that, yeah, thanks for listening, and I am off. If you haven't got any questions, thank you very much.